He went undercover to see how his company really operated. But when he noticed one employee acting strangely and asked why, she broke down in tears. What she revealed changed everything. The office hummed with quiet activity, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, employees murmuring over projects. To any outsider, everything seemed normal. But for Ryan Carter, billionaire CEO of Carter Enterprises, today wasn't just another workday. Today, he was here undercover. Dressed in a simple button-up and slacks, he had spent the past week posing as a new hire in the customer service department. Watching, listening, learning. He had built this company from the ground up, but lately something felt off. Employee complaints were rising, turnover was high, and he wanted to know why. And then he noticed her. A young woman, Emma, sat at her desk, her posture tense, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed. Her eyes were red, her expression distant. She looked like she was barely holding herself together. Ryan frowned. Something was wrong. He walked over, keeping his voice casual. "Hey, Emma, you okay?" She flinched at the sound of her name, quickly shaking her head. Yeah, I'm fine." But she wasn't. Ryan pulled up a chair, lowering his voice. "You don't have to tell me, but I can see something's bothering you." Emma's lips trembled. She tried to hold it in, tried to keep up the mask, but then tears spilled down her cheeks. Ryan's stomach twisted. What was going on? And as Emma finally spoke through her sobs, his entire world shifted. Because what she told him, he never saw coming. Emma wiped her eyes, but the tears kept falling. Ryan stayed silent, giving her the space to speak. Finally, her voice broke through the quiet hum of the office. I don't know how much longer I can do this." Ryan's chest tightened. "Do what?" She hesitated, glancing around as if afraid someone might hear. Then, in a trembling voice, she told him the truth. "My manager. He's been cutting my hours, making my life miserable." She sniffled. "He says if I don't do favors for him, he'll fire me." Ryan's blood ran cold. "What?" She looked down, her hands shaking. "I have a sick mother at home. I need this job. I can't afford to lose it." Ryan clenched his fists. This was his company, his employees. And yet, behind closed doors, this was happening. He kept his voice calm. "Who is he?" Emma hesitated, but something in Ryan's tone must have made her trust him. She whispered a name. "Mark Reynolds." Ryan's jaw tightened. Mark, a senior manager. Someone Ryan had personally promoted years ago, and now he was abusing his power. Ryan exhaled slowly, standing up. His entire demeanor changed. No longer just a concerned coworker, but a man with authority. Emma looked up at him, confused. "What are you doing?" Ryan's voice was cold, deadly calm. "Fixing this." And the next time Mark Reynolds saw him, he wouldn't be undercover. The next morning, Ryan Carter didn't walk into the office as an employee. He walked in as the CEO. Dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, his presence sent a ripple of tension through the entire floor. Whispers spread like wildfire. Mark Reynolds had no idea what was coming. Ryan strode straight toward the management offices, his assistant already waiting with files in hand. Everything he needed to fire Mark was right there. Reports, complaints, testimonies. He stepped into the conference room where Mark sat smugly, sipping his morning coffee. Mark looked up and smirked. "Mr. Carter, what a surprise." Ryan didn't smile. "Not for you." Mark's smirk faded. "What do you mean?" Ryan tossed the file onto the table. "I spent the past week undercover in my own company. I saw what happens when employees think no one is watching." His eyes burned with fury. "And I saw what you did to Emma." Mark paled. Panic flickered in his eyes. Sir, there must be a misunderstanding." Ryan held up a hand. "Save it." He gestured to security standing by the door. You're fired. Effective immediately. Mark shot up from his seat. You can't just... I can. And I did. Ryan's voice was ice cold. You're lucky I'm not pressing charges. Security stepped forward. Mark's face turned red with humiliation as they escorted him out. Employees peeked from their desks, watching as the man who once terrorized them was removed like trash. Ryan turned to his assistant. Call a meeting. I want every employee in the conference hall in 15 minutes. She nodded. Yes, sir. Ryan exhaled, steadying himself. This wasn't over yet, because now it was time to rebuild. And this company, it would never tolerate abuse again. 15 minutes later, the entire company gathered in the conference hall. The air was thick with tension. Employees whispered among themselves, confused, anxious, until Ryan Carter stepped onto the stage. Silence fell instantly. Ryan looked over the crowd, his employees, the people who made this company run, and for the first time, he saw the truth. Some looked exhausted, others wary. Too many had been suffering in silence. He took a deep breath and spoke. I built this company with the belief that hard work should be rewarded, that every employee deserves respect. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. The room remained still. No one dared to speak. Ryan's jaw tightened. I went undercover this past week to see what was really happening, and what I found, it was unacceptable. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some employees exchanged looks, others hung their heads. Ryan continued, his voice firm. Mark Reynolds is gone. And let me be clear, anyone who abuses their power, mistreats employees, or makes this workplace toxic. His eyes scanned the room. You will be next. A few gasps rippled through the crowd. The fear was real, but so was the hope. Ryan softened his tone. That being said, change starts now. Effective immediately, we are increasing protections for employees, establishing an anonymous reporting system, and restructuring management. Emma stood in the back, her hands clasped tightly. For the first time, she felt safe. Ryan took a step forward, scanning the faces in the room. No one should come to work afraid. No one should feel powerless in a company I built. He paused. That ends today. A slow clap echoed through the hall. Then another. Then the entire room erupted into applause. Ryan exhaled. This was what leadership meant. Not just making money, but protecting the people who helped build his empire. And from this moment on, Carter Enterprises would be the company he always intended it to be, a place where everyone had a voice. 1 month later, Ryan stood by his office window, looking down at the busy city streets. Everything had changed, and for the better. The toxic employees were gone. In their place, a new culture had started to take shape, one built on fairness, respect, and accountability. Employee satisfaction had skyrocketed. Productivity was at an all-time high. But most importantly, people weren't afraid to come to work anymore. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Come in, he said. The door opened, and Emma stepped inside. She looked different, more confident, standing tall, no longer carrying the weight of fear on her shoulders. Mr. Carter, she said with a small smile, I just wanted to say thank you. Ryan turned to her, his expression softening. You don't have to thank me, Emma. You just had the courage to speak up. She nodded, exhaling. Still, no one's ever stood up for me like that before. Ryan crossed his arms, smirking. Get used to it. She chuckled, then hesitated before pulling out a small envelope. HR gave me this today. My promotion letter. Ryan raised an eyebrow. I told them to give it to you last week. What took so long? Emma laughed. I think I needed to believe I deserved it first. Ryan's smirk turned into a genuine smile. She did deserve it, more than she knew. As Emma turned to leave, she paused. You know, if you ever decide to go undercover again, maybe give me a warning next time." Ryan chuckled. "Where's the fun in that?" She laughed, shaking her head as she walked out. As the door closed behind her, Ryan sat back in his chair, feeling something he hadn't in a long time: pride, purpose, fulfillment. His company had been broken, but now it was stronger than ever. And as long as he was in charge, he would make sure it stayed that way. Because true leadership wasn't about power. It was about protecting the people who helped build the empire, and Carter Enterprises would never forget that again.